Welcome to AstroVenture, the DSLR astrophotography channel. Hey there, AstroVenturers. Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is George and I'd like to welcome you. This astrophotography channel is based on DSLR or mirrorless camera bodies combined with camera lenses you own and a simple star tracker. Now, today I want to introduce a new segment that we're going to be doing here at AstroVenture called Up in the Night Sky. Now, the idea behind this segment is that we'll take a look at one deep space object, where it is in the night sky, how to locate it, and the settings that we use to photograph that deep space object. Now, with that said, it's never going to be exactly the same from camera to camera or lens to lens that each of us are going to be using. But the settings that we share will be what we use, and it will be close enough to get you to the ballpark to be able to start from there and then dial in and tweak your own settings. Now, to get started, because presently we're at the end of the first week of July, and what is overhead is the constellation Cygnus, which is the Swan. And within the Swan, there are a number of nebula, and one of them that's great for both astro-modified cameras as well as stock cameras is the North American Nebula. So that's going to be our first one that we take a look at. Now, taking a look at the night sky, first here you'll see the constellation Cygnus. Now, Cygnus, she is flying over the Milky Way, and from here in Utah, where I'm located, around the 11 o'clock midnight hour, she's directly overhead, flying south down the Milky Way band that we see overhead. Now, any simple app on your phone will help you to find the constellation, and once you've located it, Cygnus is a pretty obvious constellation. Now, located near the tail, right beside the tail, is the North American Nebula, and that's the star Deneb. Now, here in this graphic, you can see the north and south labeled, as well as the color photo overlaid as to where it is located next to the star Deneb in the Cygnus constellation. Now, this particular nebula is actually quite massive. In totality, it's larger than 4 full moons. So it's a good sized target. And that really opens it up to the photographer that does not have a real long lens to shoot with. And so I encourage you, consider looking at this particular target. Now, this image that you're looking at now, this is the North American Nebula photographed at 200 millimeters. The lens that was used for this one was a Tamron 70-200 f2.8 lens. The aperture that we used for this lens to shoot this was an aperture of f4. Now, the ISO that we shot with, we shot at ISO 100. Now, ISO 100, that's pretty darn low. This was shot on a Nikon D600 that is astro-modified, and because of that, it captures light that is normally filtered out on an unmodified camera. So if you're shooting unmodified, I would suggest jumping that ISO up to 200, maybe 400. On my Astro Modified, as I said, I was able to do it at ISO 100. And then the exposure time for each image was a total of 2.5 minutes. So just to review that, we shot at 200 millimeters, an aperture of f4, an ISO of 100 on a Astro modified full spectrum camera. I suggest again for a stock camera, kick that up to an ISO of 200, 400, and then a total exposure time of 2.5 minutes. Combining that all together, that's what we were able to capture it with. Now, this particular image, once you take a look at it and open it up on your computer, you're not going to see much from it. It does require a lot of stretching of the image in the dark and the shadowed area to actually pull it out. Total exposure time to create this image was 3 hours. You can actually pull it out in an hour, 45 minutes worth of exposure, but understand the longer that you have an accumulation of individual images in its totality up around 3 hours, you get a really clean image with really not much noise. Now, this other image here that you're seeing now, this image was shot on a Canon DSLR, and this is a stock camera, no modification, and it is a crop sensor. And you can see the difference between the two as I put them both up, between the full spectrum and how much it pulls in, how much red it picks up, as opposed to the stock camera and how much that red is modified. Now, both of these images, although shot by two different people, this image here was photographed by a Mr. Mike Nixon, and his is the unmodified camera, and then the other one was photographed by myself. I, however, did the stretching and work and adjustment on both images, so my routine was the same for both of them, which really gives you an idea of the difference between them. But even if you're not shooting full spectrum, I encourage you, this is a target that you can capture, and it is a large target, so you don't need a long lens. Okay, so for this month, I encourage you, month of June here in the Northern Hemisphere, go out and give an attempt at the North American Nebula, and I encourage you, tag it with the hashtag up in the night sky, hashtag up in the night sky, and share what it is that you capture. And then in the future, we'll do another episode just like this one, and we'll get you into the ballpark of shooting some other deep space object. So until we see you next time, I wish you clear skies.